This is the seminar of Brother Christopher Times, Pastor, Minister Christopher Times, and the Brighter Light Mental Health Group. We thank everybody on Zoom and Facebook who joined us. I turn it over to our host, Pastor, Minister Christopher Times.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Broody. Blessings to everybody today. This is a really tender subject, and we're going to be talking about mental health, homelessness, and the Black community. How does it affect us, and what types of obstacles, or are there any obstacles at all in the way of this type of work that we're doing? And so we're going to be looking at that. We're going to examine all aspects of this issue of homelessness and mental health. And
Brother Times, your audio went out. This is Baruti Carl Alexander. Brother Times, your audio went out.
right now, and they'll be joining in. So I'll be asking them to introduce themselves momentarily. And so we'll get started as soon as we can. But this is, I want to share my experience, some of my experience with mental health and homelessness. To give you some background, I've been preaching, oh Lord, since 1990, when I first got licensed to preach, ordained in 2004. In the 90s, I worked with a lot of people. I work with women, children, and I work with my most prolific work, I think, was working with the homeless men. In Houston, Texas, where I live, we had a shelter downtown, and that shelter housed a lot of people. And a lot of times they seem to be disoriented. You know, some were on alcohol, others were having some problems, and I quickly just found out. So I'm reading something. I found out.
This is the Source Seeker. We had a temporary technical difficulty with Brother Times. He seems to be back now.
Oh wow, that's weird. All that time I was off mic, I guess.
You were off mic for a second there.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what y'all have picked up. I apologize. This is weird technical day, but I worked at the shelter for a long time, and I saw a lot of problems there. And one of the big problems I noticed was about mental health. A lot of people thought, and during the 90s, that, oh, people are in, the shelters and things like that, and at that time sleeping on the streets, and still today, that, oh, they're just, winos. They gave them names, winos, and things like that. But the truth is, there was a lot more going on there. I saw people with PTSD. I saw people with all kinds of personality issues. I saw people, who had drug issues, but the vast majority had underlying mental health problems. And some of them were veterans, So it was really shocking to see, once I was in the work, what was really going on. So as a preacher and a pastor, I worked with those folks for about 4 years. And it was something that I thought was really lacking. I think most of the people in those shelters were like African American, but it was a shame because not many services were given to that population at that time. I think it's better now than it was, but it's still, I think, lacking. And so maybe we could delve into that. I see we've got one of my guests already here. I don't know if you could hear me, Miss Cowling, but are you there?
I can hear you. I can hear, but you keep going in and out.
Wow, that's really wild. Um, let me let me sign back in. I'm going to sign out and sign back in, and maybe that'll fix it.
Well, if it's okay, I'll share while you're doing that, Brother Times. My name is Baruti Carl Alexander. I'm the host of the Source Seeker Hour, and I am also a special education teacher for many, many years. And I've seen this problem very up close in my own family and the students that I've worked with. And it's just has gotten so much worse. I was downtown Houston, Texas recently, and I noticed that several of the homeless people they had to be under 30, maybe even under 20 or 25 for sure. And it's more and more of those kids that are in that environment. And it is a very difficult situation. And I asked myself, why is that? What has gone on with that to make that be the case? It didn't used to be the case where young people under 30 would be on the street. That was always the domain of an older person who had lived their life. Maybe they had got strung out. Maybe they got kicked out of the house, or just lost their job and everything went away and they got down on their luck. So it's a very difficult thing, but I personally can see how it can happen. By the grace of God, I've never been homeless, but I've dealt with all kinds of situations, and just one paycheck in certain instances, I could have been homeless. Just one loss of one paycheck, I could have been homeless. And I'm sure many of you can relate to that. We are live on Facebook also, as well as we are on Zoom. We have a couple of guests, Caitlin DeLone and Sharon Cowling. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you just fine. Thank
I can
you.
hear you.
Okay, well, thank you. If you all would like to share, just introduce yourself and let the audience know who you are and your experiences that brought you to this seminar about homelessness and about suicide. And it's a very difficult time and it's somewhat getting worse. Please share.
Sure. I'll go first if that's okay
Go
with
ahead.
you, Sharon. Hi,
Sure.
Sharon. Long time no see.
Hey, Caitlin.
Hi. I'm sorry. I look a little under the weather. I've had COVID, but I wanted to make it to this. Um, so I met Chris and Sharon working at an agency in Houston, and I just remember I had a lot of clients who struggled with homelessness, and I've seen kind of how it can affect a lot of people. And like how you were mentioning, a lot of people who are young too. I remember that it's something that you wouldn't necessarily think someone at a young age would be experiencing, but it can happen to anyone throughout the lifetime. And I saw a lot of the effects that the mental health had on it, as well as choice, as well as circumstances, as well as like jobs being lost. It's many variables contribute to homelessness as well as suicide. So I'm glad to be here to talk about this and learn with y'all.
Can I ask, where did the clientele of the homelessness people you saw, was it in Houston or some other city?
Harris County. Yeah.
Harris County?
All Harris County. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Cowling,
Yes, sir.
if you would share, and then I turn it back over to you, Brother Times.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Alexander, I met Chris and Caitlin, like Caitlin said, at one of the agencies here in Harris County. And I am a chemical dependency counselor. So in dealing with the homeless population, I've dealt with them here in Harris County and Houston, as well as in Illinois, dealing with ex-offenders that are coming out of the penal system or that are still involved in the penal system, individuals that have gotten addicted and have nowhere to go because their families have had enough and they've tried tough love and it didn't work. Um, and then those that are mentally ill as well, that have substance use issues, because they are trying to self-medicate. They don't really understand what it is that's going on with them. All they know is they want the voices to stop. They want the voices to stop. They want the people to stop following them. Then you have those that do have intellectual disabilities, um, or family members that have intellectual disabilities, that they don't know how to handle life or deal with life on life's terms, like so many of us do. I myself have been homeless here in Harris County, and it's not easy pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and marching on if you do not have a support network.
Yes, ma'am. Brother Times?
That's amazing. You all are, great and great material. I tell you what, when I worked at the homeless shelter, I saw a lot of that too, you all. I ran into people who ran away from home, from New York City, and their families were looking for them and for years and had given up and somehow got it. This was way before internet. This was back in the 90s. And I remember a family member calling on the phone saying, is, my child there? And I'm like, was able to match up, the data we had. I'm like, oh, wow. So yeah, I talked to that individual. I'm like, your family's looking for you. And they're like, I don't care. I don't want to see them anymore. Come to find out, this individual grew up wealthy, had means, and did not want to go back. And right after they, knew that their family was looking for them, this guy hit the streets. I think he was like 20 years old. And so I saw a lot of that. And it was disturbing for me. I don't know what y'all think about it, what your experience is dealing with, clients you've had. And I'm curious to know what was that like, getting them services or maybe getting them into a shelter or anything like that. I'm curious about your thoughts. Caitlin, how about you? What do you think? I mean, did you have any issues with that or?
I just remember during my time at the agency I was at with y'all, I had some struggles with getting clients to shelters because when that happened on my caseload, it was during COVID and it was hard to do. It was so hard to do. And I think that shows a big problem that comes up whenever someone is homeless is that to get access to certain resources, you need a social security number, you need birth certificate, you need all of that. And sometimes people don't have that with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's getting them accesses to the resources to be able to obtain those to then start getting into the shelters. That's a big thing and a hurdle that people have to deal with at times. This is
Yeah.
all coming back to me. This has
Right.
been like 2 years ago, and I'm like, whoa, it's all coming back.
A lot of
Preach.
them are still dealing with those issues, and
Yeah.
it's sad that it seems like our government is blocking a lot of that. You
Mhm.
know, the individuals or the agencies that do try to provide some sort of identification for the homeless population, um, they do their best. But if the individuals, I had a phone call the other day from a gentleman that was from Louisiana. He said, I just hit here. I don't know where anything is. I don't know what to do. And with him being schizophrenic, and you could tell in his conversation, he's like, I don't know where to go. The only thing that I knew to do was go to the hospital. The hospitals are not keeping them any longer. The hospitals are bringing them in, stabilizing them and putting them back out there on the street. They're not finding anywhere for them to go. The shelters are full. There is nowhere for any of them to go. The monies that the state had is disappearing at a very rapid rate. And there is nowhere for them to go. There's nothing for them to do except hit you in the head, take what you have, break into your home, take what you have, and try to make a living that way. And it's sad. It's really sad when you see those that do have mental health issues walking the streets. They have nowhere to go, sleeping in the forest preserve, sleeping on the sidewalk. And you can provide the services. There are agencies out there that will provide them with the medicines and things like that. But I don't understand Harris County, and this is just a personal issue with me. I don't understand Harris County. I don't understand. I don't know anything about politics. I'm not a politician, but all of these people in Harris County that have all of this money, that are continually building all of these strip malls and strip centers, and well, this one's not working, let's tear it down. Let's tear this one down and build another one. Why can't they be fixed so that the homeless can have a roof over their head? I don't understand. I don't understand that.
You know, I remember back in the day when Harris County decided they were going to, you know, revitalize downtown. And I, you know, that's the time I was working at the shelter downtown. They had just started breaking ground, the Enron Stadium, now Minute Maid Park, and all of that. And they spent a lot of money, you know, just kind of, because back then you had to almost step over people, you know, because there's so many homeless just wandering downtown, and people were afraid, you know, that they were going to get assaulted and all this stuff. And so they passed laws. Instead of finding out what's going on with these folks, they passed a law, the city of Houston did, that if you're homeless, you couldn't like sleep on the street. You had to, their answer was, we're going to move you outside of the downtown area. And I remember the day that happened, y'all, it was like sad, because you know, nobody asked anybody who worked with the homeless, how can we feed folks? How can we best meet their needs? What resources do you need? I work for a shelter, and I don't know if anybody asked us, you know, any questions about it. So, you know, it was sad. And I saw the police rounding people up and moving people out. And to this day, you can go downtown Houston, and under the Pierce elevators, one place, they got a homeless camp, and they got one off of Blodgett over by the old Fiesta, by the rail station, and some other notorious places. And I'm thinking, still nobody's done any real work to help these people. No real affordable shelter. I know in DC, I used to do mental health work up at the jails up there years ago in Virginia. And at least they had a few laws to where they would take the homeless and give them vouchers for hotels. And they would put them in hotels like when it was cold, and, you know, that kind of thing. But the mental health aspect, I never really saw money even up there with, you know, how can we help these folks? How can we treat them, you know, their mental health needs? I never heard about that, never saw it in the jails, nothing. And it was sad because I didn't see any. I don't know if wasn't a will or a lack of awareness, or they just didn't care. But I see the same thing down here. And it's just bizarre how, you know, the homeless seem to be, I hate to use this term, slipping through the cracks, but it just seems like that, you know. And Sharon, you're right, you know, families just get tired, you know, and they give up, and they don't want their family members, but maybe they came from jail, and, you know, families are like, hey, I don't want to house them, I don't want to put them up, they got to find somewhere to stay. It's sad, you know, and it's a real tough thing. I don't know. Do y'all have any thoughts about what would you do, you know, to help the homeless in this and with mental health and housing or whatever else you think? Will y'all have any ideas, thoughts about what you would do if you were asked the question by government or somebody?
Brother Times, may I make a comment?
Yes, sir.
Well, I have a lot of experience in not homelessness per se, but mental health. And I have current experience also now. I don't particularly want to go into the details because that's that particular person's business, but I am involved in it now. For me, I have felt, and not just in Houston, but in near Dallas, this person was involved. And if it wasn't for the mental health authorities, the person being able to go to the hospital, I'm not sure what we would have done. And for me, I'm very thankful that the facilities, of course, I haven't encountered other facilities in other states. I'm just talking about what I've had to encounter and deal with. But I want to make this point. You can have all the places for them to stay in the world, but if they do not want to stay there, you cannot keep them there. And I've encountered several people who don't want a facility. They want, quote, their freedom. They don't want to have to stay and deal with somebody else's rules. They'd rather be on the street because they can more so do what they want to do. So maybe that's a combination of mental health and homelessness. And I'll turn it over to the panel.
That's interesting you say that, and I think that's about right, Rudy. I've heard that too. That people who don't want to, I'm like, have you considered, you know, when I was working at that particular agency also, big question all the time, have you considered going to blah, blah, blah shelter? And they always said the same thing. I don't want to go there. They got too many rules, you know.
It's not
I don't know
only
if,
the rules. I'm sorry I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, yes.
It's not only the rules. It's the judgment of other people that is passed on to them. They're treated less than human. They're talked to like they're animals. Well, you live on the street. I mean, you should be used to this. What, you entitled now? Because you in these four walls or something? No. If we don't work on ourselves, if we're going to work with this population, if we don't work on ourselves and start treating people the way that we want to be treated and welcome them into the facilities and treat them like they are human beings, and offer them something other than 3 hots and a cot. What's wrong with a whole conversation?
Right.
But all they want to do is house them and then tell them, oh, well, you got to get up at 8 o'clock in the morning and pack all of your stuff and you got to hit the streets. Well, what are they supposed to do? Where are they supposed to go? How are they supposed to survive during the day? Oh, that's right. I gave you a sack lunch.
Right.
So I gave you a sack lunch and a bottle of water. It's 999 degrees outside with 900% humidity, but you want me to walk around outside with this sack lunch and this one bottle of water all day and then fight for a bed. If I'm not back by the time you say I'm supposed to be back, then I'm just out of luck and I'm going to continue to be out here.
And I've seen, and I ain't gonna lie, y'all, this happened to me. I can admit it. I can admit it. I went sideways on somebody at a shelter who called themselves a major without getting off into the weeds on what agency that was. And this particular, I'm not gonna, oh Lord, I want to say some things. But this
No.
lady, this lady, I had a Black man in that shelter who needed to be there, right? And this guy, you know, I think by 4 o'clock you had to like be there in line, sign up, and all that little whatever. They put him through the paces. Okay, great. And so she didn't like me because I actually cared about this guy. I drove up there a couple of times. I think one time I had a session in the director's office around, you know, about that time they had to be there to sign up, you know, be there V square time. And I was talking to the lady about, they had a program. It was like an extended housing program. And the catch is, and this is what I don't like. I don't know about the people who live there, but they had resources, okay? But they had conditions on the resources. So they would say, oh, you know, you could stay in this dorm room, Johnny, but you got to do chores all day, right? Or you could stay in our housing, but you got to get a job on the outside and then pay us market rate rent, right? And so this was what the deal was. And I'm thinking, so I went up there. My guy was getting into school, you know, he had some plans. He had a little check from the Social Security office, but y'all know how those look. I mean, you can't buy bread, you know, off of those checks. And, you know, after you paid a couple of things. So I'm trying to advocate for this man. Me being 5'11" and Black, I'm trying to be good, y'all. And so I'm like, yeah, my guy needs to be here, and you know, why don't y'all help him? That lady got mad at me. She told me she felt threatened, and she felt like she needed to call the police on me. Oh yeah, I'm a mental health professional, and I'm like, you treat me like this, really? Yeah, we had some words, and I left before she called the laws. I left, but I got a taste of what those folks that have to go there and deal with them people feel like. And I've seen it for myself. And if she thought that little of me to tell me that kind of stuff, what is she doing with the folks that live there? Yeah, it was crazy. And I think that's, you know, you're right, Sharon. They treat people like they're less, but I think they treat just about anybody, and I don't want to say people of color, but I just did, you know, less than. And it's sad because, yeah, I'm better than you. You know, you're not as good as me, and you better be glad that I'm offering you something, you know? Yeah, it's real tough. But what do y'all think? Any other thoughts about that?
Brother Times, if I can share two things. Sister on Facebook, Sister Karen, had a question. Her question is, what is the key to helping those with mental illness who do not want to follow any rules but their own? And Sister Sharon, she had an answer for that. She said, offer them the services, but make sure you're not doing so. Make sure you're doing so without judgment. And if I may share a comment, in all situations, I've been a special ed teacher for 30 years. I have seen people who do not care, who treat the people badly. That's in every environment. That's in every situation. It's not just in mental health services. You're going to have a bad apple in every situation. But for the most part, now, let me say this also. It's difficult to work with people who have a potential, they may spit at you, they may curse at you. I have had all of those experiences. And it's difficult not to lose your cool and not to say, hey, I'm not going to help you no more. So I give the benefit of the doubt to the people unless they give me such a cause not to. Brother Times, did you want to comment on Sister Karen Coney's comment?
Yes, you know, I think that that is a big deal when people don't want to, you know, do the rules. But I think that the rules should be looked at. I think the rules should be looked at. You know, what are you asking people to do? Maybe they don't have the capacity to do those chores or whatever the case may be. Maybe they need to, you know, receive some mental health services. Maybe they might need medication to get stabilized. And then, you know, after that, you know, talk about, well, hey, Johnny, hey, Sally, we really would like for you to help around here. What are some things you could contribute? I don't know. But just to force folks, it kind of looks to me like it's almost like forced labor, you know, when you look at how things work. And honestly, it looks like jail. I don't know what y'all think, but it just looks like jail when you're dealing with the shelters and things, the rules, looking down upon folks, you know, that kind of stuff. And I've seen a lot of stuff. I've seen people tossed out into the rain, storm and rain, and with trash sacks, because for no other reason, their 180 days are up. You gotta go. And they offered no solutions to that. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of problems. But I think, you know, they need to rewrite a lot of things. You know, how do they even engage people who are homeless? Or, you know, I kind of like the word transitional, you know, even better than homeless, but it's how you look at people. How do you treat people, you know, and that kind of thing. So it's really something that really, I think the whole thing needs to be re-examined and looked at, really. What else? I think I saw a hand. Okay.
Right, rules. She's asking, how do you help people with mental illness who do not want to follow any rules but their own? What are the rules? That's the question.
Yeah.
What are the rules that they are being asked to follow? Why is it that they don't want to follow the rules? It goes back to having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
If you sit down and you have a conversation, you'll find out why it is they don't want to follow the rules, but the rules that are being presented to them.
Mm-hmm.
After having worked in the prison system, now you know those people if they don't want to do anything else, they're not gonna follow the rules. That's
Right.
why they where they are.
Right.
But being allowed and taking the time to sit down and see them for people, for individuals, not a number, not a diagnosis, but a person. We start looking at individuals that have been diagnosed with the mental illness as, oh, he bipolar. Oh, he's schizophrenic. He's not Chris Times. He's not Baruti Alexander. He's bipolar. And that's all we see. Oh, he ain't gonna do nothing because he bipolar. That's his mental illness. What does that say about us?
Mm.
What does that say about us, not only as a people, but as a nation?
Mm-hmm.
If that's all that we're seeing is that mental illness or that prison number, whether it's their SPIN number or their TDCJ number or whatever Department of Corrections they come from, if that's all we're seeing and the crime that they've committed, why?
Mm.
Why are you spitting at me? What person that looked like me or that had my color caused you to want to spit at me?
Mm-hmm.
I will never forget this young man. He was 22 years old, calling me out my name. And because I called him by his name, Yes, he had a mental health diagnosis, but that's not what I saw. I saw a 22-year-old man that had made a mistake in society following someone else's lead and was trying to overcome it. But all he knew was this is how I'm supposed to behave because I'm in a cage like an animal. And he was angry. And I could understand his anger. So he took his anger out on me. Oh, okay. Well, that's okay. Go ahead, do what you do.
Mhm.
That's okay. But when he called me out of my name and he called me that word that everyone associates with negativity because that is how it is meant to be. That female dog name.
Mm.
And when I told him, I said, thank you. Yes, sir. I'm the best one you'll ever meet. He
Mm.
looked at me like, has this lady lost her mind? I said, no, sir, I haven't. But if that's how you feel, go ahead, handle your business. And when I flipped the script and I explained to him what the word meant to me,
Mhm.
and I had changed it from something negative to something positive, it gave him pause.
Mm.
We are all so easily angered when someone says something to us that we react as opposed to doing what we supposed to do, and that's being slow to speak.
Mhm. You know, you're right, because I I I teach anger management, right? And
Mhm.
and 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 I tell my folks, and I use the rule myself, self-imposed rule. I take 10 seconds to respond to somebody. A lot of times, especially if it generates some emotional response inside of me, right? It could be my brother, my cousin, my supervisor, whoever, and that saved me because I want to say something else. I want to, I, Caitlin, I want to say something sometimes untoward, like bad. I want
I'm
to,
sure.
yeah, I might want to cuss him out just to be real, and I can't do that,
Yeah.
So what do? And I think that self-examination piece, I think, is wonderful. Look, maybe everybody who works with populations like mental health and and shelters and stuff, maybe they should all go to anger management. I don't know, man. That's a great idea. But I think that's a big deal. Examine yourself and see, hey, am I okay? Well, maybe today I'm not. Maybe today, Caitlin, maybe today I probably should just stay home. Carl, hey, Baruti, when remember when we used to work together at ABC East, I said that name anyway. We used to, I think, take off just for a mental health day. I think we called it, just for the heck of it, just take off a mental health day. I'm not fit.
Now we take off 2 or 3, maybe in the same week, But I wanted to say this. I have what many people would consider uh, mental illness, mental sickness. However, I have learned to function with my disabilities per se. But somebody seeing me in a certain situation might would say he got something wrong with him. People have said well, let me just say this. My ex-wife says I have no common sense. I disagree with that, but that's her perspective. So a lot of people will see you and say this, that, and the other, but are you able to get on the same wavelength or understand where that person is coming from?
Mhm.
I am capable and able to discern that, and that has helped me survive. And of course, my reading ability and being able to intellectualize and understand what's going on in its entirety. So, but rules, you got to, if you're going to run an institution, you got to have some kind of rules. And you just can't change the rules for everybody that comes in unless there's a very good reason and it will benefit more people. So, you know, me being in charge of a classroom, I can't change it because this particular student, you know, he got to do certain things just this particular way. However, if your room is small enough, you can say, yes, okay, I can accommodate him, I can accommodate her, I can accommodate this one, but it still is within the overall framework. So that is, yes, you have to be prepared to adapt, but you still got to have some rules where you say, hey, this is the way it is. And a lot of times, sometimes people with mental illness just want to test. They don't really want to necessarily do this, but they just want to see if they can have their way and do it because you telling them they can't.
Test the boundaries.
Yes. So you got to judge that also. And you got to be willing to say, no, I appreciate you. I love you. I like you. But this is the way we have to do it. And in the situation of the person that I was talking about earlier, they have been able to manipulate their way either by aggression, either by playing dumb or something, but their whole ideal was to find a way to manipulate and get their way. So you have to look at that, and you have to sometimes maintain your firmness, maintain your boundary. And
Right.
but if you can accommodate and it will not disrupt everything, I say yes, go ahead and do it. Brother Times, I wanted to talk about the example that Karen gave.
Yes.
She works in a classroom, but it's apropos to people with mental health difficulties also. Somebody walking out of the room, you know, they walking out of the room and then getting up and hitting another person who's focusing on following the instructions, making excuses for why they can't follow the instructions. And Sister Collins said, look at the situation in its entirety. Why did they hit the other person? I agree with that, but you first, of course, got to stop them from hitting the other person, getting in their way or stopping. I have that happen in my classroom so many times. That's down the line, you can probably come to that query, to that understanding. But you first have to deal with the actions that happen. So I agree with that, Sister Cowling. Did you want to comment on that, Sister Cowling? I'll turn it back over to you, Brother Times.
Yes, sir.
First of all, if you have a classroom, you know, if you're in a classroom, hopefully you would know whether or not your individuals that are in the classroom have a propensity for violence. And if they do have a propensity for violence, then you should know that beforehand. And you should also know how to keep them separate from the others, because they are going to want to lash out because they're going to want to see what your reaction is going to be. Let me see. If I hit him, what's she going to do? Because he want to follow the rules. Well, I don't want to follow the rules. So let me just go ahead on and disrupt the whole classroom. So if you know that you have someone that has a propensity for violence, then what you need to do, first of all, is make sure that you're never in the room alone. If you are teaching a class, always have an assistant or someone that's in the classroom with you to help you in that situation so that you can deal with the person that's violent and that other person can deal with the rest of the classroom. Because you have to take care of it, as you said, sir. You have to take care of that issue immediately. Why did you hit them? What's the reasoning behind? Because he wants to follow the rules and you don't want to follow the rules. But violence isn't the answer. And we know that. We've all been taught to keep our hands to ourselves because you don't want to get hit back. Now, what happens if he walks up and hits you back? Then you got to fight.
Mhm.
I've never taught. I've only facilitated groups and with a combination of individuals, whether they were diagnosed with mental illness or just prisoners. Imagine being in a room full of 100 men with varying charges and varying colors, and this color don't like that one. Varying factions. These people don't like these people. How are you going to handle that when you got people that's been in prison for 15, 20 years, and they come out and they have to be in the room with these people because they don't like these people, and I'm not gonna do what you tell me to do. Oh, all right. Okay.
I have a quick answer for that, Ms. Calvin.
Yes, sir.
Warden, I'm not going to teach that class.
No,
You got
sir.
to separate.
That's not an option. But that's not an option,
Well,
sir.
they're going to get somebody else to teach that class
No, sir.
because
That's
you
not
don't
an
put me in a
option.
no-win situation.
No, it's not. It's not a no-win situation. It really isn't. And when faced, because I've been faced with that situation, and what I had to do was make them understand the outside may be different. Where you grew up and how you grew up may be different. But I promise you, if I get a knife and I slit you open, your guts gonna be the same color as mine, and they're gonna be the same color as his. So what we have to recognize is that you might be brown, you might be pink, you might be yellow, you might be dark brown. But guess what? We're all members of the same race. It's called the human race. And we all want to be recognized and we all want to be respected. So in order for us to be able to get along in this room, remember this: you the Indian and I'm the chief, and we're going to respect each other. How about that?
Well, Sharon, I got to tell you something. I used to work with a bunch of high-risk kids. And I'm talking about these kids were, I'm going to just say it like it is. They were murderers, thieves, gang members. They were charged, convicted, and sentenced.
Mhm.
And the school won't take these people back in, so they have to go to special schools.
Mhm.
And Baruta, you know where I'm talking about without mentioning the name. And I worked at one of these schools as a paraprofessional and a substitute teacher. Let me tell you something, 26 kids, right, in the same room, girls, boys, it didn't matter. 90% of them were violent, like didn't mind cutting you up, didn't mind cutting up the kid next to them, pulling out a chunk of hair. They didn't care. We had cops, like sheriff deputies there because the place was so volatile. You said something, Sharon, that made me remember how I dealt with these kids. You can have a million rules. You can have 5 rules. You can have 1 rule. Don't matter. I'm gonna tell you what mattered for me. I worked there for 6 years or so. And what helped me make it through the day was the respect piece. And I'm gonna tell you something, these kids, they got some ideas about respect.
Mhm.
I remember a kid thought I disrespected him. He tried to kick my butt. And so you know what I did? I had a conversation with the boy after he calmed down.
Mhm.
And I said, why, what happened? And he told me he thought I disrespected him. Now, the truth was, I didn't think I disrespected him. I was confused. But see, he had some history. And his history was that his daddy used to beat him.
Mhm.
his uncle, Jojo, used to molest him.
Mhm.
Okay. And so he looked at me and I resembled them people just by my facial features and my mannerisms. And so right away, it was a target on my back.
Mhm.
That was a no-win situation for me. And so when he decided he was going to jump me, that was the end of that. I mean, it was just Mr. Chris against Johnny Boy over here. Okay. And I had to use whatever I was, quote unquote, trained to use in order to get myself safe enough till the cops showed up. And I found out from talking to him that his idea of respect had nothing to do with our ideas were as far away from each other as the moon and the sun, you know. So I started learning about those kids. And before I knew it, I had earned the respect of not just that one kid, but all of these kids. And this is what they told me. Y'all might laugh about this, you might not. I remember I was walking down the hall. This is after this is my second year. And I learned the ropes, quote unquote, right? And I'm walking down the hall, and part of my job was to drug test these kids, especially if I thought that they came to school high. Well, I'd stuff my pockets full of those those cups, those UA cups, right? The 5-panel. And I had my blue rubber gloves on. And I'd be walking down the hall, y'all, when the kids was in class, and I'd just open a door with my master key, and I'd point to Kimberly or Johnny or whoever. And I just do this. And so they kind of like watched me. These kids, they studied me. And they told me, and when I'll be in there giving them, girl or boy, it didn't matter. And I said, you know what time it is? In the hall. I wouldn't say it in front of their peers. In the hall. I said, you know what time it is? And the guys, oh, Mr. Chris, man, I ain't gonna lie to you. I ain't gonna pass that. You might as well keep it in your pocket, you know? And then I hey, that's reasonable. What am I going to do? Try to embarrass you? You know, so that's reasonable. Well, we're going to have to work out something. I tell him, all right, Mr. Times. I said, well, I'll give you 5 extra days in the program. You know, all right, I really appreciate it. You know, and they go back to class. You know, and it happened with girls too. I've had people do all kind of. I had kids drinking bleach. I didn't have them drinking. They would drink it trying to get that, get a clean UA. They did all kind of stuff. But they told me one day, I'm here. They told me one day, they said, Mr. Times, they had thought, y'all, that they had figured me out. What made me different? And so they walking down the hall one day, me and a couple other kids, they said, Mr. Chris, we finally figured you out. I said, okay. Well, what did you figure out? They said that I had to smoke weed in order to be as cool. I'm gone again? Am I back?
I got you. I still hear you.
I see you, Chris.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, you still good?
So, and I said,
it's me.
and that's right. Internet's crazy, y'all. And so maybe it's the hot topic. I don't know. But they just start talking to me. Mr. Chris, Mr. Times, we figured you out. I said, okay, what'd you figure out? They said, we know why you so cool and calm and why you are the way you are. I said, oh, I was curious about that. I said, well, what are your thoughts? They said, you smoke weed, don't you? I said, what? They said, no, Mr. Times, you can tell us. We ain't gonna tell you. We don't tell. You could, we ain't gonna tell. We just level with us. I laughed, y'all, all the way down the hall. I just bust out laughing all the way down the hall because they had really kind of in their minds, they had come up with, oh, we know why he's like he is, because he not like the other teachers. You know what I mean? I thought but it all came down to that respect piece,
Rapport.
Yeah, and yes, Caitlin, and rapport. You're right. You're right about that. I don't know. Maybe you could speak to the rapport piece Because some people can just be difficult, you know? I mean,
Some people can, and rapport is a really important thing in any type of therapeutic setting, because a client, even if they don't trust you, they at least have to like talking to you, because you're
Mhm.
going to be the person helping them. And that rapport, it can be tricky because you still have to establish the boundaries, and you have to, I think, I'm pulling back from like stuff that was mentioned earlier. I think that people who are providing the care also need to have that kind of check-in. Like, are they doing okay? Are their needs being met? Because
Mhm.
why are they like losing it on someone one day, but maybe not someone on the other? Like, is their home environment okay? Are they one family crisis away from being in the shelter themselves? You know,
Mhm.
it's important to really take all those things into account. But with the rapport, it's kind of what Sharon had said before. We're just starting with conversations, just talking to the person as a person, letting them know that you hear them, because a lot of times someone just wants you to hear them and
Yeah.
hear their story, hear why they're there, and for someone to be compassionate, whether you understand or you can just feel it from them. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I know you know what I mean, Chris, but like you feel it from them and you're like, oh, okay, they're going through it, and try to offer them the best that they can have that day whenever you see them. I know it's easier said than done because we're all people and we all have our own stuff going on too, but yeah, that's kind of my take on it.
You know, that's excellent. And I remember working at that school. My God, those kids, y'all, they pushed my buttons as hard as they could every day. And
But you kept the boundary.
99.9% of the time, just being real, I kept the back. But there's some days it didn't go that way. Someday it just went, y'all, it just went side. Some days they got me. I ain't gonna lie. Some days, y'all, some days I got God. I got to admit it, you know? And when that
Because you're
happened,
human.
yes,
You're
God
human.
help me, Lord Jesus. When that happened, I would always try to pull the kid into the hall and I would say the following: yeah, I effed up. I would say it to him just like that. I effed up, you know,
That's modeling.
please. Yeah, I mean, where was I gonna go other than I effed up? I effed up, and you know, I didn't mean to embarrass you or whatever. I called it out. I said what it, you know, what, and hey, please forgive me. And y'all know what? Almost 100% of the time, that settled. That was it. They was like, dang, ain't no adult ever said that to me before. And
Right.
our relationship from that point on was number one, super solid. And then they went around and told the other kids. And I remember this because I was in a classroom full of, well, you know, real tough guys. And one guy in there, he said, don't F with Mr. Times. He's cool. And after that's all that needed to be said. Nobody messed with me after. But they had heard, they got the message. Mr. Times is cool. You know, if you F up, he gonna deal with you, but it's gonna be fair.
Well, it's probably because they could sense and feel your sincerity. It's one thing to be a teacher of special education students, to facilitate a group of individuals that are angry, to help mental health individuals, or in my case, to help substance abuse individuals. But are you doing it just for a paycheck?
They
Or
sense
are
that.
you sincere in what it is and your desire to help them? If they can sense your sincerity, And once they know that you are sincere, it's not about a paycheck, it's about your genuine interest in empowering them to be all they can be, then you got it made.
You know what? You said something powerful. I just want to interject right quick and say that looking back over my whole career, just dealing with kids, adults, and even kids in the psychiatric in a state hospital. I used to work in a state hospital. Those days were interesting. The kids and adults, they always responded to that respect piece, and they always responded to this other thing here, connection, my ability to connect with them. You could be psychotic out of your mind, about to set yourself on fire, and if you got a good clinician or just a good somebody you can talk to, that right there will be the difference, I think. You know, and I've had people, y'all, I've had people talking about mental health. I've had people who had done some really way out things to themselves and to other people. And for some reason, and this is the truth, it was a guy in my anger management class. He said, Mr. Times, I got to tell you something. I said, oh, what? He says, well, remember that time you talked about going to Walmart? And everybody who knows me knows that if I go to Wally World, it's going to be a problem because it overstimulates me and it messes with my head, and I'm gonna have to get out of that. Well, so this client knew that, right? Because I joke about it all the time. And so I said, well, why would I go to Wally World when I can just go down the street and go to Target? Okay, yeah, we're about out of time. We better wrap and go to Target. So the guy said, you know, I went to Target instead of Wally World. And he says, you know what? You save somebody, blah, 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 you know? And I'm like, oh, wow, thanks. It was awesome. We're going to have to wrap. We got like a couple of minutes. So let's just wrap by giving you your last thought.
Brother Times,
Kate, yeah.
I just wanted to share, if you wanted to go longer, this is your seminar. If you want to go longer, it's up to you.
Well, we'll see. I don't know. I know.
May I share a comment I wanted to share?
Yes, absolutely.
I wanted to comment on what you were talking about, Sister Caitlin, rapport. In 30 years, I think my thing is I can get along with the students. Sometimes I can't get along with the staff. I can get along with the students. I have a connection with the students, but the staff, you know, they think something may be wrong with me sometimes, but as long as the students can connect with me, that's okay. That has kept me employed 30 years. But there are different ways you have to make connections with students. You know, I'm a man of 5'6". You know, at that time I was maybe 165, 175. It was no doubt that somebody was going to challenge me, and all the rapport in the world was not going to help that case. So I had to have a knockout, drag out fight. And I won the fight. You know, in those days, we didn't have cameras and so forth. I mean, I'm just telling you straight up. I've had 3 of them over my 30 years. But after those knockout, drag out fights, that student respected me. So we did get to the connection. I'm not suggesting that for everybody, but basically, if I was gonna hold on to my classroom and my sanity and my safety, I had to either take much more mental health days or make a stand. And that's what that situation was. And at the end of the day, that student respected that. Now, let me say another approach in dealing with students that may be a little crazy, or human beings that may be a little crazy. They not sure I'm crazier. I got to tell you. I mean, they'll see me talking to myself sometimes, or they'll see me doing different things. But, you know, like I tell the story, I go up to the corner store and, you know, all the homeboys up there. Hey, man, give me $5. Hey, man, give me. I come right back at him, you know. But see, I can talk very proper and very intellectual and use the big vocabulary, but I can also talk on their level. I can do both of those things. And that has helped me with my rapport, with my connection, and has helped me to survive. And so, in dealing with homeless, and it's much more homelessness, correct me if I'm wrong, Brother Times, but it seems like to me that there's much more homelessness and much more mental illness. I thank God for the mental illness that they have given my loved one, but there's a lot of them out there that don't want the help and just want to go from place to place because so many young men have a problem with somebody talking to them or telling them, say, you need to do this like this. They don't want you to tell them nothing. And like I tell my loved one, hey, if you don't want nobody to tell you nothing, then you got to find your window to get your own space. Because, you know, if you stay in somebody's house, they're going to have rules. If you at a business, the boss going to have rules. If you in apartment complexes, certain things you're not going to do. You can't do. So there's a big problem with young men being able to deal with any type of boundaries or rules or so forth. And our society teaches them that things are supposed to be resolved so quickly or there's a problem. And like these young men that have committed these crimes recently, from my research, from my understanding, they didn't get their way. And they felt they were supposed to get their way. And so they got real upset and they said somebody got to pay. Instead of having some type of gratification and being able to go through steps and process, no, they said, we're going to make somebody pay. If I can't have my way, then somebody got to pay. So we got a real problem in our society, you know, and if it's not that dealing with that or the person going homeless, it's the person killing themselves because they just can't deal with all of this that's going on in their mind. And they don't know or have the tools to be able to wait, to be able to go through process, to be able to go through steps. And that's a big part of surviving and understanding and going through life. And it's a real problem with our young people. I turn it back over to you, Times.
I think you hit on a lot of great points, and it's true. A lot of times people don't have the tools, you know, they don't know that they don't have the tools, right? And I think that's where mental health professionals like us, and teachers also can really make an impact, I think, with not just kids, but the community as a whole. And that has been educators, right? Educate people on, what tools you might need in these situations. I know I had a counseling session recently with an individual who has anger problems, and the person doesn't look at it that way. And I went through some stuff, gave them some tools, and they were like, they had no clue that they were that angry, but yet they were punching holes in the walls and things of that nature. So I think that that's something to be said about that. Helping people with care, with compassion, unconditional love, creating that safe space, and letting them know this is a safe space, and then performing like, hey, this is a safe space, and we can walk this walk together and without judgment, to see, where we're going to go from here, and I think that's real important. I don't know. Let's see, folks. Caitlin, I'm going to let you give your last words, I guess. And you can also give whatever information you want. Maybe somebody might want to get in touch with you.
Oh, sure. Well, I think, with what you were, I guess I'll finish with kind of going off what you were saying with that unconditional, love to give to, the people that we serve. It reminds me of just like, Carl Rogers and that Rogerian style of you meet your person where they are at. You give that unconditional positive regard. which is a real thing that you can actually give to clients.
Yes, you can.
You can be non-judgmental and be like, I'm here to help, and allow for that safe space to be built, and remind them that you're a part of the safe space, because they might not have ever had that before.
Yeah.
And that's, we could get into all kinds of things on how like anger can be formed from that, and not being able to regulate, and all kinds of different things. But I think just setting that up, and also checking in with yourself to make sure if you're good to care for your clients that day as well. Because we are people. Sometimes we need mental health days. Sometimes we've been sick with COVID like me for a week.
God bless your heart. Yes.
It's okay. I'm on the tail end. And, it's just knowing when you're at your own limit too. And I think that this was a really great thing. I was glad to be a part of it. Sharon, I don't know if you know this, but I'm fully licensed now as an LPC. It'll almost be a whole year.
Yay.
Coming up soon, and I'm working in the Woodlands at a private practice called Texas Harmony Counseling Center with a wonderful team of counselors. We help with all variety of different types of, mental health concerns, life concerns, variety of ages. It's a really great place, and lots of unconditional positive regard is pretty much the whole thing.
Awesome
Good.
sauce.
Yeah.
I want to invite you back anytime you want to come back.
Please
Yes.
do. I'll be more. I will be less under the weather next time.
Bless your heart. You hung in there, I tell you.
Yeah, I know. I didn't talk a ton because if I talk too much, I'll start coughing.
Yeah. I remember having COVID, and that was
Fun.
like battling Mike Tyson. I understand. Yeah.
Not fun, but I'm glad to have been a part of it, and to have, been able to hear from all y'all's perspectives. This is a really important talk, and I think that it can branch off into other areas too that are important.
Easily. Oh God, yes, I know.
I know my head was going off like, oh, these areas and this and systems, and yeah.
It can that just means we need to have another one of these shows next month. That's what that means.
Sounds about right, brother.
Yeah.
Miss Callan.
Yes, sir.
Tell us about how to get a hold of you and your final thoughts. I want to know.
Well, like everyone is saying, this is a conversation that needs to be had, but we also need to find solutions. One thing that Caitlin just said that's very important for us all. You have to check in with yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know what your prejudices and your bias are before you even walk in the room, if you are going to attempt to assist anyone. Know yourself. Because if you don't know yourself, and if you don't know the reason that you are doing what you're doing, then you will not be able to follow the golden rule. Treat others as you yourself want to be treated.
Yeah.
And when you walk into the room without any preconceived notions or without any judgment, and you sit down and you have a conversation with somebody, you'll find out a whole lot of things that they don't before they even open their mouth. All you have to do is smile, because a smile costs no one nothing. It don't cost you anything. And that's something that we don't do enough of. We don't smile at each other. We don't nod. We don't acknowledge each other. And sometimes that's the difference between whether or not that person is getting ready to jump off of the bridge, go in their room and close the door and hang themselves, or hurt someone else, you have to be quiet and listen.
Mm.
That's what you have to do. Um, I'm on Facebook as well. Right now, my private practice is in hiatus, but I'm available for conversation. I thank
Sauce.
you all for being a part of this, and I thank you, Chris, for inviting me to be a part of this. Like we said, it's a conversation. Mr. Baruti, I appreciate your expertise and your experience in working with special needs individuals. I have not had the pleasure. Um, and I think because I'm not prepared, I would be afraid. I would be. And there's not too many populations that I'm afraid of. But that's one population I would probably be afraid of, especially if they're children, because our children are so precious and they are getting the raw end of the stick right about now, unfortunately. But thank you all.
You're
Thank you,
very
ma'am.
welcome. And, like Caitlin, you are always welcome back. I'd love to have you on the next show next
Love
month. Not sure what we're going to talk about, but I think it'll be a continuation of this because I think it's such a needed topic. And it's, not a lot of platforms where I think that we can discuss this very vital information about mental health and homelessness and things of that nature, suicide prevention and all that. And so I thank you for being here and a part of this process. I sure do.
Glad
Absolutely.
to be here with all of y'all.
Huh?
I was glad to be here with all of y'all. It was a great talk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. I really enjoyed it
I like
too.
the hard
And
conversations. They're good.
yay, yay.
Yeah.
Maybe there'll be other mental health professionals who can join at that time. I know, it's just, I like it, keeping the ball rolling. Not enough discussion about it. I don't think that there are a lot of places that, folks like us and teachers, educators who deal with special needs can actually have a platform to talk freely about these things. This
Mhm.
is, I think, generative and very productive and necessary. And I really appreciate y'all for sure. Baruti, thanks for everything, man. You're totally
I
invaluable.
just
I mean,
want to say, Brother Times, that we're going to coordinate a bunch of shows coming up. This is going to be a continuing thing. Besides Brother Times, other people that are in our group will be doing mental health seminars. But Brother Times is on the spotlight. He's going to keep the ball rolling also. And everybody look forward to our mental health seminars that we do in cooperation with the mental health professional. I'm a member of Brighter Source, Brighter Light, and we are with the mental health professional are bringing these very valuable seminars to you. So thank you very much, Brother Time.
all right, wonderful. I guess that's a wrap, everybody. And hey, you all tune in for the next conversation. We're going to keep it moving and keep it growing. And so, yeah, y'all have a wonderful, wonderful day and be blessed.